My own mother exploded out of her chair in that airless Columbus courtroom, thrust her French manicured finger inches from my face like a dagger, and screamed so loud the gallery flinched. "She's deranged! Mentally unhinged. A danger to herself and everyone around her. She must never, ever touch one penny of my mother's money. 22 years. Not one phone call. Not one "I miss you." Not one apology for walking out when I was 15. And now here she was dressed in designer outrage, wearing the pearl earrings she'd swiped from my dead grandmother's jewelry box, playing the grieving, protective daughter while she tried to strip me of everything Grandma Evie bled for. I didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't even uncross my hands. I sat stone still at the respondent's table in Franklin County Probate Court, Grandma's delicate gold cross necklace searing against my collarbone like a brand. My knuckles blanched bone white from gripping each other so hard. I thought the skin might split. The room froze, every cough silenced, every rustle of paper stopped. Judge Marlene Hayes, silver hair pulled tight, eyes like sharpened steel behind her half glasses, slowly leaned forward. She stared down my mother's cocky young lawyer, the one who still thought this was just another easy probate grab, in a voice quiet enough to make your blood run cold. She asked 4 words that sucked every molecule of oxygen from the room. "Counselor, do you have any idea who you're actually calling incompetent?" The silence that followed felt like the split second before lightning strikes glass. What she said next, after the lawyer stammered, after my mother's smug mask finally cracked, still makes my pulse hammer every time. I close my eyes. And trust me, girlfriend, you're gonna want to hear exactly how those paper trails I'd been quietly collecting for months turned their whole world inside out. Before I tell you how we got to that moment, the betrayal, the lies, the slow burn revenge that still makes my heart race when I think about it, I just want to say thank you for being here with me. Pouring my heart out like this isn't easy, but knowing y'all are listening makes it feel less lonely. Please drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Love picturing us all connected like this. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. If you genuinely like our content, that little red button means the world to me and helps me keep sharing these real, raw stories. No, let me tell you what really happened. My name's Charlotte Reynolds. I'm 34. I live in a cozy 1-bedroom in the Short North neighborhood here in Columbus, Ohio. And for the last 9 years, I've worked as a certified fraud examiner specializing in elder financial exploitation. I dig into the ugly stuff, forged checks, phony powers of attorney, caregivers who siphon retirement accounts, kids who suddenly borrow mom's life savings for their own emergencies. I've testified as an expert in 42 cases, 36 convictions, 14 of those right here in Judge Hayes's courtroom. She once said on record that my reports were some of the cleanest, most airtight she'd ever seen in 23 years on the bench. My mother, Vivian Pierce, didn't know any of that. We hadn't spoken since I was 15. That was the year she left. Dad me for a guy named Richard Pierce who owned a chain of failing car washes in Dayton. She didn't fight for custody, didn't call on birthdays, sent one mother's day card the first year with a $20 bill inside and nothing after that. I was raised by my grandma Evelyn Reynolds in a little brick ranch house in Grove City, just south of the city. Grandma Evie was a widow who'd worked 38 years as a payroll clerk for the state. Never made more than $48,000 a year, but she could stretch a dollar like nobody's business. She kept every receipt in color-coded folders, balanced her checkbook every Saturday morning with black coffee and exactly one packet of Sweet and Low. That woman taught me numbers don't lie. People lie. Numbers just tell the truth if you're willing to listen. Grandma Evie passed 7 months ago. Heart failure. She was 83. I was holding her hand when she slipped away in that same house she'd lived in for 47 years. She left me everything. The house valued around $320 now. Her savings, 14,000美元, a small annuity, her 2009 Honda Civic with 98,000 miles that still ran like a dream. It wasn't millions, but every cent was hers, earned, honestly, saved carefully. Meant to give me a little breathing room after years of student loans, rent hikes, and the kind of burnout that hits when you're carrying everyone else's secrets at work. 3 weeks after the funeral, I got a certified letter from a lawyer named Derek Voss. My mother was contesting the will. She claimed Grandma Evie had been in severe cognitive decline her last 2 years. Claimed I'd isolated her from family. Claimed I'd unduly influenced a vulnerable senior into cutting everyone else out. The woman who hadn't sent so much as a text in 2 decades was suddenly the concerned daughter, fighting for fairness. And the kicker? She was also filing a separate guardianship petition declaring me mentally incompetent and asking the court to appoint a conservator, her, of course, to manage the entire estate. I read that letter sitting on my kitchen floor and laughed until I cried. Then I stopped laughing because she attached evidence. Middle school counseling notes from when she walked out on U.S. abandonment trauma. Low self-esteem, shocker. A vague affidavit from my stepsister, Brooke, who was 8 the last time I saw her, and claimed I'd always been erratic. And medical records she'd somehow pulled showing I'd been prescribed anxiety meds 3 years ago after a brutal case that had me crying in my car every night for months. She remembered the exact balance in Grandma's savings account down to the penny. But she still thinks my birthday is in April instead of June. My boyfriend Ethan, a middle school science teacher with the kindest heart and the most annoyingly optimistic family, said maybe we should talk to her. Maybe she feels guilty. Maybe this is her messed up way of coming back into your life. I love Ethan. Truly. But sometimes I wonder if he's ever met a real narcissist outside of a psychology textbook. I didn't sleep much that first week. My firm, small but respected, put me on paid administrative leave pending resolution. My boss, Greg, believed me completely, but he couldn't risk having an expert witness with an open competency challenge. Credibility is everything in my line of work. One whisper of mental instability and juries start doubting your spreadsheets. 9 years of building a spotless reputation, and my mother erased it with a single filing fee. Then things got worse. She requested an emergency temporary conservatorship, asking the court to freeze Grandma's accounts immediately. She wanted access yesterday. Her evidence grew more creative. Old emails I'd sent Grandma joking about how I'd inherited her cheapness, presented as proof of financial obsession. A photo of me looking exhausted after a 48-hour stakeout captioned erratic behavior. Even a screenshot of a Pinterest board I'd made called Small Home Reno Ideas. Proof I was planning to flip Grandma's house for profit, apparently. Word spread fast in our tight-knit fraud investigator circle. Colleagues texted support, but I could feel the side-eye at the coffee machine. Ethan's mom started asking gentle questions. Is there anything we should know? Honey? His sister sent a link to a Signs of Hidden Mental Illness article. I asked him to give me space. He did, but the silence between us felt heavier than ever. That's when I did what I do best. I started digging. Grandma had added me as joint owner on her main checking account 2 years earlier, just in case I still had online access. I downloaded 3 years of statements and built a timeline in Excel the way. Grandma taught me every transaction, color-coded, every anomaly flagged. And there it was, in the last 14 months of her life. 8 cash withdrawals totaling $52,300. No matching bills. No grocery runs, no pharmacy charges, just straight cash pulls from ATMs in Dayton, where Vivian and Richard live. Each withdrawal happened within 48 hours of a documented visit from my mother. Grandma's journal. Entries she kept one in a spiral notebook, hidden in her nightstand, started mentioning Vivian stopping by more often, asking for help with Richard's business trouble. One entry broke me. She cried and said they might lose the house. I gave her what I could. I'm ashamed I didn't tell Charlotte. I didn't want her to think I was weak. My grandmother, fiercest woman I've ever known, was too embarrassed to admit her own daughter had played her. I kept reading. The visits increased. The amounts got bigger. Then came the power of attorney. Grandma wrote that she'd had a foggy day. Felt pressured, signed papers she didn't fully understand. 2 weeks later, on a clear-headed morning, she reread them and realized what she'd done. She was horrified. She revoked it immediately with her lawyer, but never told me because Charlotte works so hard I can't burden her. The notary stamp on that POA from a man who'd been dead 3 years. Sloppy. Felony level sloppy. I sat at my dining table until dawn with cold coffee and tears streaming, piecing together the pattern. Richard's first wife died in 2014. Questions about missing. Estate funds, no charges. His mother passed in 2018. Nursing home costs supposedly ate everything. Yet he bought a new boat 6 months later. Vivian hadn't just married a man in trouble. She'd married a professional grifter, and together they'd turned it into a family business. I called my attorney, Sarah Kimshop, 50-ish, ex-prosecutor who doesn't suffer fools. I sent her everything. Bank records, journal scans, the fake notary proof. She was quiet for a long beat, then said, "Charlotte, this isn't just probate anymore. This is criminal. Wire fraud, mail fraud, elder exploitation, possibly RICO if the pattern holds across victims." She asked what I wanted. I told her I wanted them to walk into that courtroom thinking they'd already won. I wanted them to lie under oath. I wanted Judge Hayes to see exactly who they were before I ever opened my mouth. Sarah laughed softly. "That's my girl." We had 6 weeks until the hearing. I built the file like I build every case. Timelines, cross-references, triple verified facts. Sarah filed a bland response, denied allegations. Asserted competency, requested hearing, no evidence attached. No counterclaims, nothing to tip our hand. Derek Voss called Sarah the next day, sounding smug. "That's it? No fight?" Sarah told him I was looking forward to my day in court. He had no idea. 2 weeks before the hearing, Brooke, my stepsister, messaged me through Sarah. She wanted to meet. Neutral spot. A Panera in Hilliard. I went. She looked exhausted. -20-9. Dark circles. Bitten nails. She apologized for the affidavit. Said Richard dictated it and she was scared not to sign. Then she told me about Richard's mother. How the nursing home bills never added up. How she'd confronted him once. And he'd grabbed her wrist so hard it bruised for weeks. She lifted her sleeve to show the faint scar. She was tired of carrying their secrets. I told her if she told the full truth under oath, I'd make sure the prosecutor knew she'd cooperated. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I drove home feeling something dangerous. Hope. Ethan was waiting with my favorite Thai takeout from the place on High Street. He apologized for doubting me, for letting his family's "but what if" questions creep in. I showed him the journal, the records, the pattern. He read in silence, then looked at me with real awe. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Just be there," I said. "Watch me work." The night before court, I drove to Grove City, parked outside Jama's house, dark now, snow dusting the porch. I didn't go in. I just sat in my car thinking about everything she'd taught me. Paper trails don't lie. Tomorrow, those trails were going to scream. March 12th, Franklin County Probate Court, courtroom 3B. Got there at 7:45. Even though the hearing wasn't until 9 o'clock. Being early, it gives me time to breathe. Watch people arrive, read the room. I wore a simple charcoal skirt suit. Low heels, hair in a neat low bun. And Grandma Evie's gold cross necklace tucked under my collar like armor. No flashy jewelry, no power red lipstick. I wasn't there to perform. I was there to end this. Ethan sat behind me in the gallery with 2 colleagues from the firm area who'd been my mentor when I started, and Jamal, who'd covered half my caseload while I was sidelined. They didn't have to come, but they did. That meant more than any verdict could. Sarah Kim sat beside me, her briefcase open like a loaded weapon. Inside, 3 binders labeled with timelines, bank statements, journal excerpts, notary records, and a fresh FBI referral letter she'd gotten overnight. We'd kept everything quiet. No leaks, no previews. Vivian and Richard arrived at 8:58, striding in like they owned the place. She wore that navy blazer she'd posted about on Facebook last week. Court day. Standing up for what's right, and get this, Grandma. Evie's pearl drop earrings. The ones Grandma wore to every family wedding and funeral. I'd assumed they were in the safe deposit box. Apparently Vivian had borrowed them during one of her last visits. Seeing them dangling from her ears made something hot and sharp twist in my chest. But I kept my face blank. Richard followed, playing the concerned stepdad role, dark suit. Solemn, a nod to the bailiff. Hand on Vivian's lower back like he was escorting royalty. Brooke slipped in last, eyes down, sliding into the back row on their side, but as far from them as the bench allowed. She didn't look at anyone. Derek Voss, their attorney, looked even younger in person, maybe 28. Expensive haircut, cheap confidence. He kept checking his phone, probably waiting for some last-minute miracle. All rise. The Honorable Marlene Hayes, presiding. Judge Hayes entered, took her seat, adjusted her glasses, and scanned the room. Her eyes landed on me for half a second longer than everyone else. Recognition flickered, subtle, but there. She'd seen me testify 14 times. She knew my work. She knew my voice on the stand. She didn't say a word about it yet. Derek started his opening. 12 minutes of polished nonsense. Loving mother reuniting after years apart. Concerning only for her mother's legacy. Worried daughter-in-law manipulated by a troubled granddaughter. History of instability, evidenced by therapy records and medication. Need for immediate conservatorship to protect vulnerable assets. He never once mentioned my job. Not once. He painted me as some fragile, erratic accountant who couldn't balance her own checkbook, let alone manage an estate. When he finished, Judge Hayes asked if the petitioner wanted to make a personal statement. Vivian stood. She smoothed her blazer, cleared her throat, and launched in, "Your Honor, I haven't seen my daughter in over 20 years because of painful family circumstances. But I never stopped loving her. I'm here because I'm terrified for her. Charlotte has struggled with mental health since she was a teenager, oppression, anxiety, instability. My mother, God rest her soul, was in decline, and Charlotte took advantage of that. She isolated her, controlled her finances, cut me out completely. I'm asking this court to appoint me as conservator so I can make sure my mother's wishes are honored and my daughter gets help she clearly needs." She pointed at me then, voice rising. "She's sick. She's always been sick. She should never be allowed to handle money hurts or anyone else's." The courtroom went dead quiet. Ethan shifted behind me. Maria whispered something sharp under her breath. I kept my eyes on the table, breathing slow, letting her words hang in the air like smoke. Judge Hayes didn't react. She just turned to Derek. "Counselor," she said calmly, "do you have any idea who the respondent is? The woman your client just called mentally incompetent and dangerous?" Derek blinked. "She's an accountant, Your Honor. Works at a small firm in Columbus." Judge Hayes let that sit for a beat. Then she looked at Sarah. "Ms. Kim?" Sarah stood. "No theatrics. Just facts. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that reframes the petitioner's entire narrative." Judge Hayes nodded. Sarah handed copies to the clerk, who passed them to Derek and the bench. She started simple, the bank statements. Between January of last year and the decedent's passing, 8 cash withdrawals totaling $52,300 from Evelyn Reynolds's joint account. None tied to regular expenses. All occurred within 48 hours of documented visits by Vivian Pierce. Derek started flipping pages fast. Vivian's smile faltered. Sarah moved to the power of attorney. This document, dated February 2024, purports to grant Vivian Pierce control over Evelyn's finances. The notary stamp belongs to Harold Jennings, who surrendered his commission in 2020 upon retirement. The document is fraudulent on its face. Vivian's face drained of color. Richard sat rigid, jaw clenched. Then Sarah opened the journal. She didn't read everything, just the key entries. Grandma Evie's own words, dated, detailed, the sudden visits, the tearful requests for money, the foggy day she signed papers she didn't understand, the shame she felt for not telling me sooner. I revoked the POA the moment I realized, Grandma wrote, but I was too proud to burden Charlotte. She worked so hard protecting other people's families. I couldn't bear her knowing her own mother fooled her. I watched Vivian while Sarah read, her lips parted, then pressed tight. Not remorse. Anger, like she'd been robbed. Sarah finished with the pattern. Richard Pierce's first wife's estate in 2014, significant unexplained shortfalls. His mother's estate in 2080, nursing home. Costs claimed to exhaust assets. Yet new assets appeared shortly after. We've referred this matter to the FBI's Columbus field office for wire fraud, mail fraud, and elder financial exploitation investigation. Preliminary review indicates potential multi-victim pattern. The room felt smaller, air thicker. Derek's hand shook as he scanned the binders. Judge Hayes looked at him. Anything to add, counselor? He asked for a 10-minute recess. Granted. I watched him lean over to Vivian. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw her reaction. Confusion, then shock, then pale fury. He was telling her, finally telling her who I really was. The expert who'd put 36 people behind bars for exactly what she'd done. The woman who'd testified in this very courtroom more times than he'd probably been practicing law. Vivian merely looked for the first time in 22 years. I met her eyes. No smile, no triumph, just steady. Court resumed. Derek stood, voice thin. Your Honor, after reviewing the evidence, the petitioner wishes to withdraw the petition and dismiss all claims. Judge Hayes shook her head slowly, given the serious nature of the evidence presented, concluding apparent fraud, forgery, and exploitation. I am not prepared to simply dismiss. I'm referring this matter to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office for Criminal Review and forwarding all materials to the FBI. The petition is denied with prejudice. She looked at Vivian one last time. Mrs. Pierce, you may want to speak with counsel about next steps. It was over in under 90 minutes. No screaming match. No dramatic collapse. Just paper trails, doing what they do best. Speaking the truth louder than any lie. Outside the courthouse, Ethan pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. You were incredible, he whispered. Quiet, calm, lethal. I've never been prouder. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. You did it exactly right. They never saw it coming. Brooke approached me on the steps. Quiet, shaky. I'll testify, she said. Whatever they need. I'm done protecting them. I nodded. Thank you. That took courage. The FBI didn't waste time. Agent Laura Chun called me 4 days later. Sharp, direct, mid-40s. She'd already pulled Richard's financials back 15 years. We found more holes than I had. Vivian and Richard were arrested May 3rd. Federal charges. Wire fraud, mail fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The indictment ran 22 pages. Brooke cooperated fully. Immunity in exchange for testimony. She told them about the bruises, the threats, the way Richard controlled every dollar. She was a victim too, just slower to see it. Trial was quick, 2.5 weeks. I didn't go every day back to work. New cases piling up, but I was there for closing and verdict. Vivian, guilty on 5 counts. 7 years federal, minimum 5 before parole. Full restitution. $52,300 plus interest. Penalties, court costs. Richard, guilty on 8 counts. 9 years, facility in Kentucky. Car washes seized, liquidated. Assets sold to pay victims, including Grandma. Evie's estate and others, they'd bled dry over the years. Their nice suburban house in Dayton, auctioned. Country club membership, revoked months earlier for unpaid dues. The life they built on stolen money crumbled like wet paper. Vivian sent me a letter from prison 6 weeks after sentencing. 8 pages. Excuses, blame shifting, a half-hearted, "I'm sorry if I hurt you." Sarah read it first, then handed it back. "Want a reply?" I shook my head. Some trails aren't worth walking. I kept Grandma's house in Grove City. Ethan and I go there most weekends now. We sit on the porch with coffee black for him. 2 sweet and lows for me, and I tell him stories about her, about how she'd laugh at my spreadsheets, call them love letters to honesty. We are planning to fix up the guest room. Maybe for when we're ready for more than just the 2 of us. He proposed in November. At that little Italian place on Bethel Road where we had our first real date. Unlimited breadsticks, terrible house wine, perfect memories. I said yes before he finished the question. My firm welcomed me back the day after the hearing. Greg apologized in front of the whole team. My first case back. A 79-year-old widow in Westerville whose grandson had drained $76,000 from her IRA. We recovered every cent. He's serving 3 years. Here's what I've learned and what I want you to carry with you. Girlfriend to girlfriend. People will try to take what's yours when they think you're weak. Family especially. They count on silence, on shame, on the hope you'll just let it go to keep the peace. But peace isn't free. Boundaries are. Documentation is. Truth is, Grandma Evie used to say numbers don't lie, but people do. And the ones who hurt you worst will always underestimate. The quiet ones who've been keeping receipts. Set those boundaries early. Build your support circle, friends. Therapists, even if insurance fights you. Women's groups on Meet our Bumble BFF. Track your money like it's your life story, because one day it might have to tell it for you. And when the betrayal comes in for too many of us, don't scream back right away. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay silent and let the evidence roar. Thank you for sitting with me through all of this. For the comments, the messages, the shares. You've no idea how much it means to know I'm not alone in these stories. If this hit home, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments, have you ever had to set a hard boundary with family? Or discovered someone you trusted was taking more than they deserved? I read every single one. There's another story waiting if you want it. But for now, thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.